one common theme that I did recognize between TYT and Howie Hawkins, and also the Gravel teams, the teams who were running Mike Gravel's campaign last year, is they all had sort of these establishment-like takes on Syria, or at least anti-Assad takes, I guess I should say. And I think that one thing that really gives them cover for that is that Noam Chomsky also has said, when I was interviewing him, he said to me he thought that U.S. forces could serve a positive role in Syria to help protect the Kurds. As far as the U.S. being involved in the civil war, we should we be or should we not be involved in the civil war in Syria?
Well, depends what you mean by involved. So, should we have been giving arms to the opposition? It's very hard to say. Remember that the Assad regime is a brutal, murderous regime. It happens to be the legal government, but it's responsible for most of the atrocities. Now, at the very beginning, you go back to the beginning, there were peaceful protests, nonviolent protests calling for mild reforms, democratizing the very harsh authoritarian systems, some economic reforms. They were met with vicious repression. That set off the civil war. There were forces in Syria, kind of moderate democratic reformist forces, which were trying to maintain themselves, but pretty quickly were overwhelmed by the jihadi elements that were started pouring in. And that led to a very complex civil war with many sides. Should the U.S. have been involved at that point? Well, if there had been, not the U.S., but if there had been any way to protect the actual democratic forces, probably would have been worth doing, but there may not have been such a way.
It just seems, I guess, a little counterintuitive, because you've been so outspoken against the U.S. acting as a global police force, especially in concert with NATO.
I'm not opposed to the police either. If my house gets robbed, I call the police. Okay? I'm against the police when they shoot people. But these social and political world is not an axiom system where there are simple rules that you just follow rigorously. It doesn't make any sense. Life's much too complicated for that. You have to ask about the consequences of the policies you're talking about. So take, say, a contingent of U.S. troops in Rojava, the Kurdish areas. I don't want to see U.S. forces abroad. I also don't want to see Kurds massacred. Okay? You have to make a choice sometimes.
That's one of the issues where I personally kind of disagree with Noam Chomsky. There are some others. He also told me he's in favor of gun control, which is kind of just, I think, an odd thing for an anarchist to say. And he also is really skeptical of a lot of different conspiracy theories, including the John F. Kennedy assassination conspiracy theory. So I guess just my general question is about Noam Chomsky, because I know that you've met with him before. When he was on my show again, he said actually you and Glenn Greenwald are two of the journalists that he respects the most. But just in regards to some of these issues that I laid out here, do you think that Noam Chomsky has changed at all over recent years, just generally in some of his opinions? And do you think that maybe some of Chomsky's bad takes may hurt the anti-imperialist left in some ways?
Well, first of all, Noam Chomsky is not the Pope. I mean, and I think it's unfair that people appeal to him to try to settle disputes and what's your pronouncement on this or that topic. I mean, he's a human being. He has his own opinions on things. He's been around for quite a long time. He's produced this incredible amount of work, and obviously you can't agree with a person about everything, and it would be unnatural if we did. I disagree with him about certain things. I think it's okay to disagree with him about things and still have enormous respect for his work. And I wouldn't even know if I characterize his recent takes as bad takes. It's just that sometimes he has a different point of view of things. On the Syria question, that's an area where I've tried not to say a whole lot because I don't know. I haven't been there. I haven't spent a whole lot of time covering that issue, and I try not to talk about subjects that I don't know a whole lot about. Chomsky's sort of different. He reads so voraciously that he opines on everything, and I think it's possible sometimes that you can speak about a thing and not necessarily be right about it just because you might have been misled by something that you read, or maybe he's right about it and we just don't know. I mean, I on the Syria issue, my instinct is that there's been a propaganda campaign about it, as there is with almost every one of our interventionist adventures. That campaign has downplayed certain elements of the story, like the fact that the people we're aligned with are, essentially Al Qaeda, right? Like there are real questions in terms of the forces that we've been backing in that story, but because that's the same position that, say, somebody like Michael Flynn took, it's become infamous. So people are not talking about it. The Syria thing, it's been used as such a shortcut to smear people in the last 5 years. I mean, I think Tulsi Gabbard got it probably worse than anybody. That term Assadist has suddenly become, a term of art. And again, it's the same people who 15 years ago would have completely blanched at calling somebody a Saddam lover, and now they're just running with terms like Assadist. They're just not recognizing the contradiction there. So I don't know. I'm sorry, it's a long-winded answer. I have huge respect for Noam Chomsky. If I even make it to his age and I'm still able to speak a coherent sentence, I will consider myself hugely lucky. I think he's a giant intellectually, and I sometimes feel like he's been forced into a role that isn't fair to him.